Okay, welcome back. We're on page 898 talking about rotation. A story that I have is I was an intern at an organization, and one of the things they did, I spent 1 week in each one of the organizational substructures, okay? And I learned an awful lot. And so then later when I was put in my honest-to-God real position, I remember a conversation we were talking about in the conference room, and one of the division chiefs said, well, call down to so-and-so and see if you can get this done. And I said, well, they're not the ones that do that. It's this organization over there that does that. He goes, oh, yeah? And I'm thinking, he's the boss, for God's sake. And he doesn't know that? I knew it because I spent a week down there. Just saying. Okay, excellent idea to have that kind of rotation going on. So, the whole point of that is, if you hire junior people and kind of grow your own, that is a fantastic thing. Because they have the basis. They understand where people's angst are. They understand, where the crazy parts of the organization are, who are the troublemakers. Okay, I'm saying that facetiously, but you know what I'm talking about, where the sensitive areas are. Yeah. Okay. So on page 900, they talk about infrastructure teams. You could have a team kind of set up to do things. You could have a web, email, printing, security, particularly high user visibility items like email. Like if email went down, they're going to scream and holler immediately. I mean, even if the internet went down, they could say, well, okay, it's down. I could live without that for a few minutes. But if email goes down, oh boy, you're going to hear about it. Anyway, and it's back to that whole centralized management concept. If you're centralized, you have enough people, you could have somebody, an email expert or a web expert or whatever. Definitely security expert. You really ought not have, like 5 people working on security. It really needs to be one team. One team, not scattered. Okay, good. Customer support, page 902. So this is the thing that has the highest impact on your customer. Let's just talk about customers from an internal perspective. Just your users, okay? This is going to have the highest impact on their opinion of the IT section is the help desk, okay? So they're probably the lowest paid people in the entire IT staff. It's not a glamorous job. A lot of people don't want to work at the help desk at all. It's not like, oh, wow, gee, I get to go to work and be on the help desk. And yet, it is probably the most important thing when it comes to the perception of your organization. So, can the customers actually help? Can they say, I had to wait, 3 days before I get my printer fixed. And you say, well, I'm sorry, we just don't have the staff. But if you talk to your boss about this, maybe we can, do something about this. Can that happen? Just saying. Okay. So you want the customers to feel comfortable with you. You want to build a relationship with the users. Okay. So let's just say, for example, they may not want to submit a trouble ticket if they think it's just some dumb mistake they made. Okay. They're not going to put a trouble ticket in. But they might catch you in the hallway. You go, hey, I'm kind of having this problem, am I doing this right? And you go, well, hang on a second, let's go find out. So being accessible to them and having them ask you dumb questions without having to make a formal request is actually a good thing. Of course, obviously, the best place for this, if you decentralize, right? You have a support person there in the organization. That would be best. And try not to, pass something off to another person, like, oh, that's not my job. Let me pass your trouble ticket to someone else to do, because you're the one they're talking to. You'd be like, I don't know the answer, but I'll get back to you. So you're the one that contacts the other person to get the answer, right? But don't just pass them off and go, sorry, not my job. Go talk to Bob. That's not how it works. Okay, the idea is you want them to feel comfortable. That's the idea. Okay, good. All right, keep going. So help desk, page 904. That's the first tier, and you might have a second tier help system, but the help desk is probably the first tier. You're going to have a single phone number that everyone calls, right? So that's clearly centralized, right? A single phone number everyone calls. You're probably going to have a centralized tracking system, or I certainly hope you do, to keep track of all this stuff, and maybe you can make some trends like, whoa, looks like we're having some problems with these brand printers or something. Okay. So help desk is very important because, once again, that's what the customer sees. Okay, and so even though it's probably the worst of all the IT jobs and the lowest paid of all the IT jobs, from a customer's perspective, it's the most important of the IT jobs. Okay, just saying. Okay, we'll talk about that again in the next chapter. Outsourcing, page 904. So most likely, IT is probably not your core competency. You know, you're manufacturing something, that's your core competency. IT is just something that's required. Like, yeah, I got to have a legal department. Yeah, I got to have an HR department. We don't do HR for a living, and we're not a law office, right? So, again, that makes it kind of a prime thing to be outsourced. A lot of people do this. So, large needs versus small needs, that's kind of the way it kind of works. You know, if you have a lot of things you need done versus small things. For example being e-commerce. So is e-commerce something that is a core competency? Yes, absolutely. Right? If it's an e-commerce website kind of a thing, then yeah, your IT, that's a large need. Right? You probably ought to do that in-house. But if it's a small need, like, you know, PC needs to be replaced, yeah, you could contract that part out, right? You could outsource that. Okay. Trust. When you outsource to someone, you're basically giving them the keys to the kingdom. I mean, you're giving them administrator rights on your system. Wow, there's got to be some trust there. And these employees don't work for you, and so they could swap them out at whim. You know, somebody come in and I'd say, you know, who the heck are you? Oh, I just replaced Bob. And I go, well, I didn't know anything about it. Oh, yeah, you know, Bob quit last week. Like, hey, you don't have any idea. Like, and you're thinking, who the heck is this person? Should I give them the admin password or not? Okay. Security is definitely the issue associated with outsourcing. Even if they are responsible for security, if something goes wrong, you're not going to be able to turn to your outsourced partner and say, you guys screwed up. It's going to be you, okay? You're ultimately responsible for the security of the system. They're just bit players in that thing. Part of the problem is the outsourced company doesn't really have a stake in this thing, right? You know? I mean, other than their contractual arrangement, I mean, do they really care if it takes 2 days to get a PC replaced? Or do they really care if there was a misconfigured router for a couple of hours on the internet? I mean, right? Yeah, it's just a job to them. They don't care that, oh my God, our competitors were able to steal our price list. Right? They don't have a dog in the fight. Okay, so continuing that kind of thinking on page 906, they talk about consultants and contractors. So the consultant basically is a narrow scope. In other words, you hired somebody to come in and do one thing. Like you bought a brand new router and you bought the support contract that went with it. So a vendor came down to install and configure it. So you hired a consultant just to configure the router and maybe teach your people how to do this, and then they're gone. So it's just temporary, right? So a firewall expert makes kind of sense. This can be kind of overdone, though. You got to be careful. The one thing they talk about in the book is that if everything new and exciting gets done with a consultant, that means the old and boring is what your people are going to do, and they don't like that. Like, well, I wanted to install a new router, that kind of thing. So yeah, be careful. One of the things we did was we required the consultant who was there to install the router to basically do on-the-job training. You know, explain what they're doing. It took longer, right, to install the router, but they explained it all to them and gave a little class, you know, did the whole shebang. And so that way we felt comfortable, and, you know, the consultant wasn't, you know, slam bam, thank you, ma'am, we're out of here. Contractors, these are like people that have the same scope as your own employees, right? I mean, essentially they could be physically embedded in your organization. And in fact, you know, in our world, unless you ask them, hey, are you a real employee or are you a contract employee, you probably wouldn't be able to tell, because they sit at the same cubes with the same PCs, the same phones, same badges, everything. Can't tell them apart. Anyway, And you can have contractors that are just filling in for positions. That's one way to do it. Or you can have contractors that come in to do projects, you know. Okay. They're basically the same scope of duties as your own folks. Okay. On page 907, they talk about sample organization. You know, you can have really, really small organization, maybe like 1 or 2 system administrators, and that's it. And then a medium, this is when you start to specialize. Okay, Jill, you're the one that's going to take care of the servers, that kind of stuff. Large, you have lots of specialization. Jill does the web server, Sally does the email server, you know, Bob does the database server, that kind of stuff. E-commerce, okay, you're probably going to have like 2 sets of everything, right? So maybe you even want to have 2 teams. It's an idea. You can have a systems operations team and a site reliability engineering team. In other words, those that operate on the day-to-day, nose to the ground, and those that are looking slightly more at the horizon. That's one way of thinking about it. And then universities, you know, this is centralized, but they have their own little pockets of money. There's a cool story, some shaded area stories about, you know, this guy got a research grant, so he bought a server. And then after the project was over, it's like, what do you want to do with the server? I don't know. Let's go put it over here and do something. So we'll give it to the grad students to do. And so, you know, those things are just kind of funky. But anyway, so start with 1 or 2 system administrators. Never 1. Because if there was only 1, the guy would never be able to take a holiday, right? No way. You basically just need 2 to make this thing work. Okay, we made it to the end of this chapter, and stay tuned for the next one because it's a doozy.